Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
The alarm clock chimed above my ear. The sun was streaming through the tight, closed curtains. A man was asleep in his clothes on the couch, head down dead. He was being pulled and tugged by his sleeve. A little skinny girl about 4 years old and read, "Daddy, wake up, wake up. Are you going to be late for work? Come on, get up." George finally could barely make out his eyes and began to rub them. I don't understand what's going on. His head was hellishly buzzing and his mouth was aching all dry. He began to remember that yesterday after work he got drunk again with a colleague with grief, and he barely remembered how he had dragged him home. The man looked at his daughter in her pajamas, who was crying and trying to shake him off, and he felt terribly ashamed. What kind of a worthless father am I? Shame on me. My poor daughter. George sat down on the sofa, put his arms around Lisa and put her on his lap. "All get up. Don't cry, darling. I came in late last night. What time is it? Let's go to the kitchen and make breakfast and get ready for the garden." Lisa put her arms around her father's neck and pressed herself against him. Then she grimaced sharply. Daddy, you smell bad. Don't drink anymore, you promised me. Mom will come back from the hospital. She'll scold you. I'll tell her everything. Tears came to George's eyes again, and he couldn't stand it and decided to tell her the truth. It was hard for his daughter to hear every day. The same question about when Mommy would be back, when she would be well soon. It was just unbearable torture. The man pulled all his will into a fist and honestly answered Lisa. "Baby, look, Mommy's not coming back. She lives in heaven now on a cloud, and she watches you and me from there. I couldn't. I didn't know how to tell you before. Forgive me, Bunny, and we'll live together now. I swear to you by all that's holy, I won't drink another drop. I'm sorry, baby. I just feel so bad. I'm so sad for Mommy, so I got drunk last night." Lisa cried even more bitterly and huddled closer to her father. "She is dead. Yes, I think so. I miss her so much. I missed her so much. Just don't drink anymore, Daddy. I'm so scared when you're drunk." George drank water greedily, swallowed pain pills for his head. Then with shaking hands barely made semolina. But Lisa ate it silently, without caprice, somehow braided her daughter's braids. It was more difficult for him than to calculate a monthly budget. And they got it together, finally. The daughter got to daycare, cradling her favorite doll. He waved goodbye, got in the car, leaned back in the seat, and suddenly cried himself bitterly with longing. But why was everything like this? Why did Maria leave her life so early, and she and her daughter were left alone? How did she miss her warm, tender hands, affectionate gaze, and fervent smile? His wife's health problems began long ago, 2 years ago, with frequent colds, long lingering coughs, and weakness that did not pass for months. George had many times persuaded his wife to go to the doctor or at least have an x-ray, but each time Maria would tell him off. "Oh, George, why go there? It is clear enough that the bronchitis. My neighbor gave me a great prescription with the policy, and everything will pass. It's nothing. That's it. Don't worry about it. And Lisa's just a baby. Who you gonna leave her with? I'll be in and out of those offices all day." George insisted I take the day off and babysit. "What's the problem? I don't like your cough at all. It's taking too long to go away. But please go to the doctor." My wife promised. "All right, if the tincture doesn't help, I'll go on Monday for sure. I promise." But the longer Maria treated herself and prepared all sorts of potions, the worse her condition became. And the visit to the doctor again dragged on. Gradually, pains in the chest joined. At first rare, then more and more often. Eventually, it got to the point where my wife felt ill right in the kitchen and fainted in broad daylight. Good thing little Lisa ran to her neighbor who had already called an ambulance. The wife was taken to the hospital. George was called from work, and he and his daughter waited in the corridor for the doctor to find out what had happened to Maria. The doctor's verdict killed the man. He swore profusely. "You are both adults. How could you let a disease get so far down the road? We don't live in the Stone Age. Your wife has terminal cancer, and it didn't develop in a month. A lot of time has been wasted. If you'd gone earlier, had a scan, there'd be a better chance of recovery. And now, George staggered, looked at the doctor, and almost cried. So, nothing could be done. How long does she have left? Maybe we need to get some kind of medication. I'll be back in a jiffy. Maria's so young. I love her so much. And we have a little girl. I can't live without her. Alone. I can't. The doctor assured George, we've already started intensive chemotherapy. Let's hope for the best. The young body should be able to cope. You can't go home yet. His condition is serious. Come back tomorrow. We can't give up hope. Cheer up, you have to believe in the best. The doctor's words inspired George and gave a ray of hope. And he said to frightened daughters, don't give up. The doctor promised that he will definitely cure our mother. She will get well soon. You'll see. But that, unfortunately, was not destined to come true. George unsuspecting. The next day, he bought a gorgeous bouquet of flowers for Maria and ran to the hospital early before work. He wanted very much to see her, to please her, to cheer her up. But by the sad face of the nurse, he immediately suspected something wrong. Maria's room was empty. George at first thought maybe his wife had been sent away for some kind of treatment. I don't know. The nurse came up quietly and muttered inaudibly, "Please accept our condolences. Your wife died half an hour ago. We did CPR, but it had no effect. The disease was too advanced. Metastasis everywhere, you know." "I'm so sorry." George slowly sat upright on the floor, holding the very bouquet in his hands, clutching it to him like a child of the king on his arm, the sharp thorns of roses, and sobbed unsuccessfully, not believing the reality of what was happening. He only blamed himself for not forcibly dragging Maria to the doctor when everything was just beginning. He saw, because he understood that it had dragged on, that ordinary bronchitis could not last for months. And he didn't insist, he didn't force him. To his daughter. At first he dared not tell the truth. For the duration of the funeral, he took her to visit a colleague. But every day Lissa literally tortured him with the same question, "Dad, and when Mom comes home, she is better. Why aren't we going to see her at the hospital? It's missing her." George lied about his wife being sent to another regional hospital. He averted his eyes, and his own heart was bleeding. He didn't know how to tell a child that her mother was dead, she was gone and would never be. The funeral was scary. George could not tear himself away from the coffin, would not let it go into the ground, and still did not believe that this was the end. My head was completely blank from the horse dose of sedatives, and my eyes swelled with tears. Then the gray, hopeless everyday life stretched on. The daughter understood nothing and waited for her mother. And George's heart was torn into 1,000 pieces from unbearable melancholy and grief. Everything in their home was a reminder of Maria. Literally every little thing, the bathrobe, the dressing table with cosmetics and her favorite perfume. George couldn't even dare put his wife's toothbrush away, lest his daughter suspect anything. The bitterness of loss and unbearable longing burned from within with a burning iron. He did not want to eat, sleep, or wake up in the morning. So he began to drink with grief after work. A little at first, and then more. And yesterday I got so drunk that I don't remember anything at all. But today, looking at his frightened daughter, he firmly decided enough. It was time to tell Lisa the truth and finally stop drinking for his daughter. Indeed, when he told Lisa everything, he felt even better. And his daughter stopped pestering him with questions. Not only that, but now Lisa seemed to have grown up in a moment and tried to look after her father as childishly as she could. She made his tea, buttered his bread, wiped off the dust. And this at 4 years old. Often they reached out together. The album looked at the happy family photos and cried, not ashamed, remembering their mother. And both felt a little better. A year had passed. Life had long since settled down and gone back to normal. George, as he had promised his daughter, no longer drank. He had his own little construction store. Not a millionaire, of course, but he and his daughter had enough to live on. Lissa loved her father madly and tried not to upset him in any way. She helped him as much as she could. Her father sent his daughter to a music school to take her mind off her grief. And to his surprise, the child turned out to have a real talent for music. Teachers praised Lisa vied with one another and said they had never seen such a young talent. The daughter even composed one tune by herself, and all the time she played it. George was delighted to buy a piano so Lisa could practice at home as well, and he enjoyed listening to her impromptu concerts. He had also gone to music school himself as a child, but nothing good came of the idea. George was lazy and skipped classes. So for his daughter, he was very happy and terribly proud of her. Soon a new employee, Cindy, took a job in the store. A woman, very effective, prominent, and self-respecting. She was quick on her feet and had her eye on the director. Decided it was a very lucrative batch. The widower has a good stable income, decent, non-drinking, and also with a nice house in a good neighborhood. But his young daughter was not part of Cindy's plans and was only an annoying hindrance in her cunning and devious schemes. At first, the lingering widower did not react to Cindy, as if he did not notice her deep cleavage or too short a skirt. George did not look at women at all after Maria died. He still could not forget his wife and decided to live only for his daughter. But Cindy was persistent and cunning. She befriended George at first, obligingly bringing him tea and coffee. They could even have a nice chat. George talked a lot about his beloved daughter, and Cindy lied brazenly. She does the dishes herself, doesn't she? And she can read and play the piano. What a clever girl. I love babies, especially girls. I always dreamed of having a girl. Too bad God hasn't given it to me yet. And then one day, they had to stay up late with reports. Cindy realized this was her chance. George was sitting all over his papers and counting on a calculator. When he felt someone's gentle, warm hands on his neck, and then a gentle kiss. He was surprised. He asked Cindy, "What were you thinking?" "Stop it at once, there is no use." But the woman suddenly burst into tears, and through her tears began confused territories. "You don't like me at all, yes. Tell me honestly, and I'll quit tomorrow. Don't you see? I've loved you from the first moment I saw you, but it's as if you ignore me. I can't go on like this. I'm already divorced. I can't find my place. Thinking about you day and night." The stunned man suddenly looked at his colleague with very different eyes. A beautiful, gorgeous woman was sitting in front of him, confessing her love to him. A beautiful, gorgeous woman, and he dummy hadn't noticed anything until now. You can't cheat nature. And his whole being reached out to her. He responded with a passionate kiss, and so spun their romance. And soon the couple were married, and Cindy quickly moved into the house of George. The woman gave George passionate nights and hot hugs. She sang sweetly how she loved him. And he really believed it. What if it was destiny? She quickly began to command and control everything on the rights of the mistress. But their relationship with Lisa did not work out right away. The girl in her gut was led into the lies and phony games of her stepmother. My father, on the other hand, didn't seem to notice it at all. And he believed unconditionally everything she lied to him. Between Lisa and Cindy, more and more often quarrels and conflicts began. The girl tried to complain to her father, but he would not hear her. She said one thing, "My daughter, Mom is not going to get up, and life goes on. It's hard for me alone to raise you. I'm not an old man yet, and I want a normal family. Try to get along with Cindy. Don't be capricious." Lisa yelled in her heart, "She's not my mother. How can you not notice? She is mean and does not like you at all. When you are not at home, she is a little creep and calls me and hurts me. And when you come home, she gets all sweet and gentle, and you believe everything, don't you?" George tried to talk to Cindy, but Cindy just shrugged it off. "George, don't you see? The girl's jealous, that's why she's angry. I'm not her mother after all. It's all right. In time, she'll get used to me and everything will be all right. You've got to be tough on her. She's already sitting on your head." 6 months later, Cindy suddenly started a very unpleasant conversation for George. "Listen, darling, while you were away, some people from a huge construction company, Stroy Invest, came by. They buy up land nearby, including ours, and want to build luxury camping sites in its place. After all, there are lakes here, and the place is beautiful. I've been thinking, maybe really sell everything and fly, to live abroad or at the sea. How do you like the idea? George frowned and answered firmly, "I will never sell my house, period. Too much of my labor was invested here. Everything is made by my hands. It's even more of a memory of Maria. Why do you have to go somewhere else? I do not understand. I have a stable business. Lisa goes to a good music school, near the pool and many sections. So I'm strongly against it, and let's finish this conversation. Or are you unhappy with our family life?" Cindy immediately tried to change the conversation to another topic, realizing that she had not achieved the result she wanted. "But don't get too excited. I was just asking if you don't want to sell what shirt you want ironed for tomorrow. Go ahead and take a look." And a week later, Cindy suddenly suggested at breakfast, "Let's go on a picnic in the woods this weekend. I know a great place far from the city. No one around. Near the woods, river, clean shashlik in the heat to relax. It's a long time since we went anywhere. Lisa, look, I'd even bought you a real fishing rod for children." George supported Cindy. "Isn't that a great idea? I'll take the tent. Why is it lying around? We'll have a family vacation. All right, it'll be a family weekend. We can't sleep over though. It's freezing at night. I don't want Lisa to get sick." Lisa was happy too, but she found her stepmother's behavior very strange. She had never been so kind to her. We drove for a long time. Cindy was showing the way. When everyone got out of the car, her husband began to look around. "The place is so strange. You picked it, to be honest. There's a lot of things around here that aren't different. The sun barely shines through the wild, uninhabited trails. Even I feel uncomfortable. It would be better to go to the lake." Lisa, too, squeezed to her father, and in this wilderness was not at all comfortable. "I didn't feel like having any fun." Cindy, on the other hand, was having fun with Sherbatova, but not rambling dearly. "Me and my class at one time went on vacation. And let's better put up a barbecue tent. We'll put up, settle down at last that. Ladaka help, carry bags from the car, get fishing rods." After a couple of hours, it became quite cozy in the glade. The aromatic smell of shashlik hung around, and the table was laid with all sorts of delicacies. Cindy poured a big mug of tea and gave it to her husband. "Here, drink it, but the herb is very tasty. I made it myself. I'll pour Lisa and me a drink in the meantime. Oh, what a nice shish kebab. I'm drooling. Catch up." The tea seemed to George a little bit bitter, but he still drank the hot beverage. Suddenly, about 10 minutes later, everything around him was blurry, and the pines began to dance in front of his eyes. Voices were deaf and distant. His legs and arms were unresponsive, and his eyes were simply slimy. George woke up from being slapped on the cheeks and shaken hard. "Citizen, wake up. Where are your wife and daughter? Where did you put the corpse? Rascal." The man rubbed his eyes and couldn't think of anything. There were some empty vodka bottles lying around, and the standing barbecue was lying on its side. And next to it on the blanket, there was a bloody knife and a torn jacket Cindy with crimson stains. Lisa was nowhere near her at all. George whispered with his big lips, "Where is my daughter? Where is she? What is going on at all?" We went out with my family for a shish kebab, sit down to eat. I drank some tea, and I don't remember anything else. "Who are you anyway?" The men provided him with identification. They were representatives of the police and children's services. One of them explained that you're not playing games with us. "We got a call a couple of hours ago from your wife, Cindy. She begged us to protect her from her tyrannical husband. Said you intend to stab and kill her and threaten your daughter. Confess now. Where is your wife's corpse? Where is the daughter? Did you kill her too?" George was about to shout. "I never laid a finger on anybody. I didn't drink at all. I was driving. That doesn't make any sense. There was a barbecue here yesterday. I was grilling kebabs. We sat down, we ate, and I don't remember anything else. Can you hear me? Where's my Lisa? God, I couldn't bear it if something bad happened to her. I don't know where Cindy is, but I didn't kill her. I swear to you. Do you really think I took my family out for a barbecue, a picnic, to kill them? That doesn't make any sense." The policeman got angry and started twisting George's arms and driving him into the patrol car. "Look, the bastard's going to say no. He's playing the fool. What barbecue? What kebab? You're drunk on vodka. Yesterday you smelled like a beer keg. That's all right, we'll solve this storyteller in no time at the station. All right, guys, let's get all the evidence. And about the forest and the river in case we find this scoundrel's wife and daughter. And we'll have to ask the villagers of the nearby villages. Maybe they've seen and heard something. And you, hurry up. Now your house is a prison for many years. What a bastard. How can you kill a family in cold blood and pretend to be an innocent lamb? How much blood? We'll run forensics and we'll find out. George, it felt like he was in some kind of horror movie. I mean, it can't all be true. Maybe it's such a horrible nightmare and he's still asleep. No matter how much he tried to remember, nothing came back. A complete blank in his head. Last memories on the table, salads, kebabs, sweets. And he drinks tea. Everything. But then where did those vodka bottles come from? Who put that nasty stuff in his mouth? Looks like he's been set up badly. But who and why was it still unclear? More importantly, where Lisa and Cindy had disappeared to. The next day, he received word that Lisa had been found in the thickest of the woods. She was bitten by mosquitoes and terribly frightened, exhausted and completely numb from the intense stress. She would not make contact, only crying profusely. How much George did not beg to let them see each other for even a few minutes was not allowed. The child was sent to the hospital for observation, and a month later a depicted corpse was fished out of the river. Forensics determined that it was the remains of his wife Cindy. George tore his hair out and screamed until he was hoarse that it wasn't him, hadn't killed Cindy, loved her, but he was only beaten and forced to sign a confession. Eventually he broke down and got 15 years in prison at his trial. They spat in his face and screamed, "Damn you, murderer," to rot behind bars, and George just sobbed in helplessness, covering her hands. But that was not all. The man lost his parental rights to Lisa, and she was placed in an orphanage. He was now officially nobody to her. Neighbors testified that he drank and took poor care of his daughter. They said he often threatened her and his wife with violence. But that was complete nonsense. Lisa loved him more than anyone else in the world, and he hadn't had a drink in 100 years. George suffered many hardships in prison. He was beaten and abused many times. A bone in his leg was damaged, and he became lame for life. The man wanted to kill himself. The only thing that stopped him was his thirst for revenge and his hatred for the person who had done all this to him. He was ready to tear the offender to pieces, whose evil script had shattered George's life, and it warmed him to think that he would find his daughter after all, and they would meet. George longed for Lisa madly, and in his dreams always cradled her and held her tenderly in his arms. Behind him, the prison gates rattled loudly, and a lame, blind, and burnt-out convict came out. He smoked a cigarette, spit on the ground, and smoked toward the bus stop. There was almost nothing left of that businessman and decent man George. The first thing the man did was slip home, but he was dumbfounded when he saw a huge tourist base on the side of his house. He wished he could ask the guards, "What's up?" But they quickly chased that kind of bum out and wouldn't even talk to him. "Get out of here, uncle. What's your house?" They say a businessman used to live here, but it ain't you. You've been telling me fairy tales for a long time, so it's off limits to the likes of you. George became very offended that now he is no one's scum of the earth, and that he will be kicked out of everything as well. At the orphanage, he was taken aback. The headmistress came to his senses. Lisa was adopted a long time ago by very good people and gave her his last name. So that's the end of the train. George cried, wiping away his tears with his sleeve. How could it be? Why did she have me as a father? I thought at least I would see life with my daughter. A clean slate, and here it is. This is family. She lives in this town. The headmistress, she said slyly. What did you want, George? You were deprived of paternity 15 years ago. You shouldn't have gotten drunk on your daughter. You should have watched her better. So you could say Alyssa was lucky. Better someone else's family than a father who's a murderer and a felon. They are not here. They live far away overseas, so don't even try to look for them. Don't spoil the girl's life. Have you seen yourself in the mirror lately? But what's a clean slate? What are you talking about? Yeah. And the woman left with a wave of the hand. He's a nobody. He's a nobody. He's a nobody, a bum and a convict. So why live at all? What does a man swallow his tears for? He bought a bottle of cheap vodka from a stall and walked toward the dump, where the local homeless always lived and washed up. Two of them were rummaging around in a huge garbage bag, cheering like children, pulling out an almost new, discarded hooded jacket and huge rubber boots with a hole in them. George walked up to them, holding out his hand. Will you join me? George, me. I just got out of prison. The house was sold without me. The daughter was raised by strangers. And I'm a bum now. So I got nowhere else to go. Want a drink? The vagrants, calm and friendly, answered. I'm Tony, and this is Jack, if you're not kidding. Look what we found. See if there's anything you like. 'Cause winter's coming, and we're gonna need some insulation. We live in an abandoned cottage nearby. There's an empty one there too. If you want, we don't mind. George was sincerely grateful that you did not ask about anything, did not pry into the soul, and that's such a simple human attitude. So he started living in one of the shacks near the dump. He collected empty bottles and scrap metal and used the money to buy some food. I tried to stay away from the city limits without needing to. Everything there had changed beyond recognition over the years. And it hurt George deeply that he was so low. He was terribly afraid that some of his former colleagues or friends would recognize him. The man was well aware that he was despised by the good half of the town, considered a murderer of his own wife. And he didn't do it. But who cares about the truth? One day, George found a real Soviet piano in a landfill. The man's heart even snapped. Immediately, he remembered his daughter playing a tune she had invented. How it was great to live in his own house with Maria and his daughter. And then, after he met Cindy, everything in his life went to hell. But now George appreciated the instrument altogether. On the other hand, he decided to drag his shred away and break it up for firewood. It would burn for a long time, and began trying to move it. Suddenly, a cool car pulled up to the dump. A young guy of athletic build got out of it and started throwing garbage bags on the dump. When he saw a homeless man trying to drag a piano by himself like an ant, the young man smiled and played his favorite melody as he passed by just for fun. A good instrument. It's a pity it's dying here at the dump. George's eyes blurred and his insides shattered. He dropped everything and ran after the guy. Boy, wait a minute, I'm begging you. Tell me, how do you know that tune? My daughter Lisa wrote it when she was a child. Don't be silent, I beg you. Take pity, tell me. It is very important to me. The young man dumbfounded and looked at him. But actually this is the tune of my favorite bride. Her name really is Elizabeth, but there is no way you could be her father. I know her family very well, and Lisa's parents are very famous and wealthy people. Businessmen don't dare you, and the bride has the same last name. I've seen pictures of her as a child. They're all in it together. So you're confused. George was crying. Tears flowed past his will down his wrinkled, clean-shaven cheeks. Lisa has a mole under her knee. She also used to fix a curl behind her right ear all the time as a child, without even realizing it. Her birthday is April 10. She has a small scar on her shoulder blade. But how do you think a homeless person would know such details? Please be sorry. I really am her birth father. It's just that we were separated and she was put in an orphanage, and I was put in jail for nothing for years. I don't want anything from her. I gave up on myself a long time ago. I just want to see her, hold her just once. Do you have any idea how long I've dreamed of that? The boy looked at the tramp in a daze and knew perfectly well that he was not lying. Everything was adding up, and he felt very sorry for him. My name is Mike. All right, I'll help you see him. Where can I find you? George shouted cheerfully yes. Here I live in a shack on the outskirts. Everybody knows me around here. George, my name is Limp. I'll be very much looking forward to it. Thank you, Mike. The guy suddenly reached into his car and pulled out a fresh newspaper and handed it to the hobo. You read it on the second page. It's just about Lisa. She is a rising star. So are you proud of your daughter? Mike went away, and George seized the newspaper, found the necessary page, and began to read the article avidly. Our correspondents yesterday had the honor of attending a great event in our city, the Nuggets Talent Contest. Here, the young people performed in a variety of genres and categories. We were pleasantly surprised how many talented and gifted young people we have. Many of them can handicap the famous stars because all performed live, without lip sync. First place was shared between two participants, Sebastian, a novice pop singer, and Elizabeth, a young pianist and composer. The girl truly captivated the audience with her unusual acting and pitch. She received a standing ovation. Undoubtedly, a brilliant future awaits such talented young people. He reread the article again and again and couldn't believe his daughter's success. She really is talented. But how painful. Kicked in the heart. George kicked the piano in his heart and shouted, "Damn the bastard who did this to my family 3 times. If I had my way, I'd burn in hell and tear it into 1,000 pieces." The next morning, the very same car from yesterday stopped outside George's shack. The man ran out wearing nothing but a shirt and ragged pants. In front of him stood his Lisa. My God, how had she grown? How had she changed? She was no longer the helpless little child, but a beautiful, statuesque girl with long hair. George was so afraid she wouldn't remember him, had forgotten him, or didn't want to communicate. Never mind. He is, after all, a murderer to everyone. But Lisa barely looked into those same squinting eyes and saw the pure, warm gaze that warmed her as a child. She immediately recognized her father. She declared as a little girl rushed to hug him. "Daddy dear, you've been found. God, don't you think I never forgot you? I remember Mommy too. I never thought I'd see you again. How glad am I?" She didn't care that her father was a bum and smelled bad. She couldn't let go of her arms. After all, he was the person most dear to her, the one she had been so cruelly separated from for so many years. George sobbed, wiping away tears and territory. "Daughter, you know I'm not a murderer. I didn't kill Cindy then. I don't know who or why set me up so cruelly. It was slander that separated me from you. But know that my hands are not in blood." Lisa whispered, "I never believed it. I remember how kind you are, how good you are. You're just not capable of murder. But none of that matters now. You're not staying here a second longer. I won't let my own father sneak through the garbage and live in this horrible shack. It's not fair. Let's go to our house. Mike and I have a mansion outside of town. There's plenty of room for everyone." George timidly asked, "It's a bit awkward. I don't want to be in the way if my fiancé doesn't want me there." Lisa pushed her father forward to the car. "Papa, don't be silly. You're the dearest person to me, and I'm glad you found you. Mike, I've got the gold of the world, boy. You'll see." George was dumbfounded as they pulled up to the huge mansion. Everything was so chic and expensive furnished. A beautiful manicured yard with a big oak arbor and a path of roses. And all around was a draped slab of flowers. Lisa led her father to the 3rd floor. There was a cozy room with a balcony. The girl said, "Here is your room. It is always warm and bright, next to the shower room. I prepared everything for you there. When you finish, come downstairs. I'll make dinner, and then I'll take my time. We'll talk about everything. Daddy, I missed you so much. I don't remember when I had a normal bath anymore, and I couldn't even dream of a jacuzzi." Lisa took care of everything. On a hook hung the huge terry towel, a soft bathrobe, and in the room lay clean, obviously just bought today, clothes to size and cozy house slippers. It touched the man so much that he almost cried again. He had already forgotten that maybe someone needed him. And such elementary things seemed to him incredibly touching. When George came down to the dining room in his new clothes, clean and shaven, Mike stood up. "Whoa, steamed up. George, I didn't recognize you. Have a seat. We'll have supper. Would you like some potatoes or fish in a jar?" Lisa's learned how to make it very well. "How about 5 drops for acquaintance? There's a decent cognac if you need it." George shook his head. "No, I don't. I've been sick of it for a long time. I'd rather have some juice, if that's all right. God, how nice. How cozy is your place. And how delicious! I haven't eaten home-cooked food in 100 years, and I've forgotten what it tastes like. Lisa, thank you, my girl, for coming to the meeting, for not turning your back on your father. I was so afraid that you had forgotten me. You were only 6 years old when the tragedy happened. Tell me everything. Do you remember anything? I drank the tea Cindy poured me, and then I had a blackout. And when I woke up, there was no one there, neither you nor Cindy, some bloody things, empty bottles. And we hadn't even taken any alcohol with us. And it was the police and child welfare that woke me up. Allegedly, Cindy called them and told them I was drunk and threatened to kill her, and you too. But you know that's bullshit. And then they told me they were taking away my paternity. They say I didn't raise you right and I was drinking. But you can't help but remember that never happened. And 3 weeks later, they found a body in the river, and forensics confirmed it was Cindy. But I swear by all the saints I didn't kill her. I did 15 years for nothing. It's monstrous. My own child was taken away from me for nothing. I just don't understand who and why would want to ruin my whole life. The desire for revenge and the desire to see you. It kept me alive. Otherwise, I would have died a long time ago. I swear. I didn't have any obvious enemies. I never crossed anyone. I don't know who I hurt so much. Lisa answered quietly. Call me a fool, but I'm pretty sure Cindy had something to do with this whole nightmare. Remember how many times I told you she was lying and twisting? But you didn't believe me. And how many times while you were away, she was whispering on the phone and calling me the scum of a stranger. And I remember it was Cindy who suggested we go on a picnic in the wilderness. Even you were surprised. Why, I wondered, was it necessary to go so far away when the woods and the lake were not far from our house? You could have a quiet rest there with your family. Don't you think it's strange that I, just like you, remember almost nothing? I woke up in the wilderness. Can you imagine how scared I was? No one around. And I was alone. I was terribly cold, mosquitoes were biting me, and my legs didn't listen at all. I screamed till I was hoarse and called out for you. Then I sat under a tree and cried softly. They didn't find me 24 hours later, very cold and exhausted. And I was completely numb from the shock, especially when I got to the shelter. I became completely withdrawn. I was often hurt, and I didn't know how to fight back. I was very lucky that the orphanage patronage paid attention to me, not my battered girl. They already had a grown-up son, Herbert. He was studying abroad. Wendy's mom says that after the benefit concert, all the kids were like dazed, running after presents, pushing each other, and happily flying away with sweets during the sweet table. And I just sat there, unmoving. Her motherly heart wavered, and she was the one who talked Robert's husband into adopting me. I am eternally grateful to them. For the first year, my adoptive parents only dragged me around, devoted me to medicine, a professor, a psychologist. They were looking after me a lot, talking to me. They showed patience and respect for my grief. So we conquered my dumbness. Hypnosis helped. Wendy's mom kept taking me to music school. I started writing my own tunes. I was hired a great private tutor, invited to participate in concerts and performances. We never directly talked about the fact that I was adopted. Over time, I became comfortable and cozy in their family. I started calling them Mom and Dad. I saw how pleased they were. I loved them sincerely in my own way. But in my heart, I always remembered you, Dad. And I never forgot you. Just so you know, it was you who first instilled in me a love of music. And when I write a tune, I always put a little bit of sadness and love for you and my deceased mommy. I haven't forgotten her either. And remember always, George said quietly, I am proud of you. Daughter, you're a great girl. And I am ready to bow at the feet of those people who put so much warmth of their soul into you. I bow to them. And about Cindy, maybe you're right, but she's dead. Then how? What's the point? Lisa frowned. I don't know yet, but I'm determined to get to the bottom of it. I won't leave it at that. We need to find out who was behind this bloody spectacle, destroying our lives. Mike supported the bride. As an outsider, I listened and wondered how you survived all that. It is inconceivable that so many misfortunes can befall a man at once. I suggest we turn to my friend's father. He worked all his life in the agencies as an investigator. He's a smart guy, and now in retirement opened his own agency. Believe me, it's definitely digging, even though it's a long time ago. Tomorrow we will go. Mike, understanding the situation, soon said, "Well, my dears, I'm going to bed. I think I'll go to work tomorrow. I have to get up early. And you have a talk. It is so many years we didn't see each other." "Lisa, what did you peck your fiancé on the cheek with?" "Thank you, Daddy dearest. Really, he's a gold mine." "I told you." The family sat huddled together for a long time and talked until almost dawn. George finally fell asleep in a soft, clean bed, serene and restful sleep. His dream had come true, and he was reunited with his daughter. It remained to find the culprit of all the troubles and punish according to justice. The next day, they all went together to the detective agency. They were promised to find out everything and call back later. Life went on as usual. Lisa introduced her own father to her adoptive parents. To George's surprise, in spite of their status and wealth, they turned out to be really nice and simple people. There was not a drop of arrogance in them. So often inherent in rich people, George sincerely thanked that they adequately brought up, cured, and did not let his talented daughter disappear, and they only smiled in return. Lisa was like a gift to us. After all, my son had long since grown up and fallen out of his parents' nest. And my husband and I were so used to taking care of someone that our marriage even began to burst at the seams. We simply became estranged from each other. I don't know why, Lisa, honestly, but when we saw her at that children's party, it wasn't a child. It was an old woman, heartbroken. Her eyes expressed such pain, such a hopeless sadness, that everything turned over in my soul. I thought to myself, my husband and I have all the strength, wisdom, wealth. We can't complain. So can't we make this poor little girl happy again without a care in the world? Laughing and happy in the sunshine. After all, it's not normal that at 6 years old the little girl looked like a statue and had a black hole inside her. It was a challenge, and we took it. Yeah, it wasn't easy. Especially the first year, Lisa was very bad at contact, shut down in his grief. But gradually we overcame everything, and Lisa became a normal child again. And still in each new tune, I hear a note of sadness and longing for loved ones and lost people. So thank you, George, for such a wonderfully touching little girl. She has really become dear to us over the years. I hope we have the same warm relationship now." The girl sincerely hugged her adoptive father and mother and replied, "I cannot and will not divide you. You are all my family and loved ones. So soon we will all be together at my and Mike's wedding." 3 weeks later, finally called from the detective agency and reported the incredible news. It turns out that Cindy is alive and well and not at all murdered. Not only that, she was the one who pulled the whole thing off to sell it for a profit. George's lot with a more expensive house and lived the rest of her life with ease, which she did inlay on other people's documents. Experienced investigators tracked her down, detained her, and brought her to town. Now Cindy is in custody, and investigators are piecing together witnesses and evidence of her crimes. George persuaded the investigator to arrange a confrontation with them. The man could not wait to look into the eyes of this scum and ask why she had ruined his life. George and Lisa sat in investigator David's office and couldn't find a place. Both of them were nervous, waiting for Cindy to be brought in. And then they brought her in. The woman, in spite of her confinement, looked fine. She still had the same appetizing figure, long, smooth hair gathered in a careless bun, and impeccable manicure. The only thing was the wicked, prickly look that gave everything away. Seeing George and Lisa, Cindy grinned wryly. Holy cow! And here it turns out the whole family is here. But hello, ex-husband Fluffy and the lovely stepdaughter. I never thought we'd meet in this life. I didn't do my plan right. I should have given them both more sleeping pills so they wouldn't get over it. That would have saved us a lot of trouble. George asked Cindy indignantly, "How could you do what I did to you?" And Lisa? She was a defenseless little child then. Why did you do this to us? I can't understand it in my mind. Answer me. Cindy smirked. How can I tell you? I grew up in a family of drunks. I never knew warmth or a mother's affection. And of course, I didn't get any inheritance. not a penny of money from my dead drunken parents. But I was young, not stupid and attractive. I wanted to live a beautiful life, not just to get by, counting money from paycheck to paycheck. I even had a lover all the time. I loved him a lot. But what good was he? Except for bedtime. And then I found you. I knew right away it was the perfect way to get you around and live happily ever after. Which is exactly what I did. It was very easy for you. You almost immediately floated and believed in my supposed love. You know, if it weren't for your young daughter, I'd probably still be living with you and had affairs on the side. But that little brat was smart beyond her years, curious, and she quickly became suspicious. She stuck her little nose everywhere. She tried to complain to you. I wasn't happy with any of it. And then I got an offer to sell your land. They give me a sum of money right away. If you'd said yes, I wouldn't have wasted a lot of time and effort on my plan. I'd have just disappeared with the money. But suddenly you were as stubborn as a sheep not to sell, that's all. So you left me no choice. I had to eliminate both you and your daughter, so I could sell the house and the land at a higher price and continue to live at my own pleasure. You have to admit, it worked out pretty good though, like clockwork. Lissa almost shouted, as I found myself with a wild frequency, and calmly, as if nothing had happened. Explained so I have carried you there asleep and have thrown under a tree. I was sorry for my own head. I did not kill you, just left you there, that's all. George asked angrily, but where did your blood come from? And what body was found in the river then? What about forensics? Cindy laughed angrily in his face. God, what a knave fool you are. Did you have to cut your hand for the sake of the case to make it believable? I tried. And my lover, the investigator, slipped the body to me. A homeless woman and a local. So they threw it in the water at night. And then they found it in the reeds. And it wasn't difficult at all to slip the money to the expert. The rest was a technical matter. Your neighbors were happy to confirm for a small fee that you were a bad father. You drink and don't take care of your daughter. Allegedly before the tragedy, and they all complained that you beat me and abused Lisa. The only thing I didn't calculate was that your stroller would survive, grow up and decide to get justice. She's rich now. Some people are lucky, and luck is on her side. She hired some real professionals. I still don't know how they found me in the Capitol. I was living perfectly well with a fake ID. And so you're a sucker, you'd never get to the truth. The girl was shaken by Cindy's arrogance and self-confidence. And you talk about it so calmly now. Is there any humanity at all in you? You're not a human being. And George added, I want to kill you, trample you viper, but I'm not you, so you'll answer for everything according to the law. You're going to feel a little prison food now. They'll tell you how to live by the law, how to ruin two fates, how to separate me from my daughter. And it's all for the green papers. You know, if you die in prison, I'll be glad. Scum like you don't belong on earth. I hate you, you know that. But Lisa, even now in such a difficult situation, was wiser. She said, you don't have to hate her. Daddy, look at her. I even feel sorry for her. You know why? She lived a worthless, empty life, never loved anybody, hated everybody. She's got no family, no kids. She doesn't have a soul to live with. What good is that? She was a defective, sick person if she had no compassion or love. So God is her judge. The main thing is that you and I have found each other and we won't part again. The only thing I ask is to review your case and restore your good name. Let's get out of here. Goodbye, evil stepmother. Know this, I pity you. No one needs you. George's case was reviewed and all charges and convictions were dropped. Of course, all those years of torture and humiliation in prison and separation from his daughter no one could bring back. But morally, the man felt much better. Lissa's foster parents insisted that the case be broadcast on television news. And everyone saw what werewolves in uniform worked in our system of law enforcement agencies, easily fabricated cases, and put innocent people in jail. The resonance was huge. Heads exploded from the very top. Despite the statute of limitations on the crime, Cindy was convicted. The trial was public. A lot of people gathered, and now she was being shouted in her face by the scum of the earth. You are not a woman. Damn you, you almost caused the death of a child. You had your husband thrown in jail, and you and your lovers all the time. But Cindy was unstoppable. She sat silent, did not shed a tear, and regretted only one thing, that he did not strangle little Lisa in the woods, which subsequently ruined her contented and happy life. George, on the other hand, was on a white streak. They celebrated their daughter's wedding in the best restaurant in town. She was led to the wedding by two fathers at once, the native and adopted under his arm. And Lisa was happy because she loved them both equally. Son-in-law Mike got George a job at his firm. He was now in charge of the fleet and drivers. He also lived with his daughter in a mansion. And soon Lisa announced that she was pregnant. George was really happy and at last prepared to become a grandfather. Made with his own hands a horse for a baby in a yard and a beautiful sandbox. Externally, George also greatly transformed. Thanks to Lisa. It was she who insisted that his father get his teeth fixed and his health improved. After active treatment, George had almost no limp, and even his wrinkles had gone down a bit. In the evenings, Lisa loved to play the piano, delighting the family with her melodies, and often joked, "Daddy, and you're still a wow. Why don't you get married a third time?" George was knocking on wood with apprehension. "Ugh, no, I've had enough. I will wait, love him, nurse him, and spoil him. I want to live for you and your family, and make up for all the things I've missed out on over the years." They embraced. Lisa couldn't help but rejoice that Daddy was now always there to listen, to help, to support. Even Mike noticed that his beloved was not sad now, always happy and cheerful, all because she had found her own father. The music she plays is different now, cheerful, light, happy.